Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where we just had a very good weekend for movie stars, an endangered species. At least according to some of you. Some of you vehemently are like, movie stars are done, Grace. And they are kind of like on the ropes, but this was a very good weekend again for why, it's a very good case for why they still exist. But first off, some of you are probably like, I don't care about that, Grace. You know who's a star? Joker. He's $1 billion movie. Well, I know he is. And that happened on Friday. And on that day, I made a video breaking down that historic accomplishment. And you can check out that video via the link down below in the video description. Now, we're talking about what happened this whole weekend, right? All right, so after the past few weeks, which have been interesting, right? It seemed that Ford versus Ferrari had all the earmarkings of a box office flop. A 2.5-hour runtime aimed at adults. And while you might think it had, not being a Warner Brothers film going for it, well, Fox, or Disney Fox, failed to launch the similarly challenged Ad Astra just last month. So Disney Fox, this is really interesting, got spooked at the last minute, and they lowered their own box office projection for Ford versus Ferrari's opening weekend to the high teens. Talk about blowing a tire. But lo and behold, the flick, and it might have actually been a good thing they did that anyway, because it now, just from performing as expected, it's a huge overperformer. Now that the flick raced past the checkered flag it's only its first lap, but still with 30 million, which again, in light of other recent surprise flops, makes Matt Damon and Kristen Bale look really good. And not only does it look good compared to other recent box office adult flops, but also recent racing movies have crashed and burned at the box office. So what's the difference? Damon and Bale. Now, this is on par with the debut of another adult winner this season. That's Downton Abbey, where the brand was the star. And brands likely helped here too. Ford versus Ferrari is a very sexy title, compared to, say, Dr. Sleep. Dr. Sleep fell like a rock, this weekend, as you'll see when we go over the holdovers. So yeah, the title is important. We all were like, you should call it The Shining 2, but they went with Dr. Sleep. Stephen King's like, I feel good about it. Does he? Nobody likes having a flop associated with them. All right, so anyway, The Blind Side is the best comp that I think anyone could muster, quite frankly. There's a case for it. They seem like very different movies on the surface. But when you think about it, it's a fellow adult flick with star power, right, that opened in November to the tune of about 30 million. That movie went on to earn 255 million domestic. It wasn't that strong overseas, but that's a lot of cash, stateside. And it was a huge Oscar contender and winner, right? Ford versus Ferrari surely has the same middle America appeal, and both movies did get the very rare A+ cinema score. A freaking plus! That's impressive. But this being awards season, there are a lot of other adult movies lined up in the weeks ahead. We'll see if Ford versus Ferrari can take them. Can it drive like 10 miles through the crowd? I think there's a chance that it could, because there is room for audience growth, as the opening weekend audience was strongly male at 62% and skewed older. So if Disney Fox can switch up their marketing campaign a little, plus you add on the strong word of mouth and numbers like this, right? They might be able to get a few extra box office laps out of it. This is also great news for James Mangold, giving him an extremely strong follow-up to Logan, itself Oscar nominated, as I'm sure you recall. It doesn't get enough credit for this, actually, for Best Adapted Screenplay. If Ford versus Ferrari can post some nominations and maybe even some wins, Mangold will once again be firmly established as both a strong box office and awards director, and that's a pretty sweet place to be. This is a very nice opening, and I think will also help that film with its awards campaign. It's a big glossy studio pick, but showing that it's getting people to go to the movies will be appreciated by the people who make the movies and vote for their awards. Because Ford versus Ferrari did prove that people still go, while the debut of Charlie's Angels and The Good Liar made the movie business look awfully bleak, right? Last weekend on Movie Math, I said that Elizabeth Banks was set to tank her career in a single weekend, and that indeed seems to be the case. But the wrinkle is that it's actually a good movie. No one, as I said in my review, no one will ever believe that. But here's where it gets interesting. Its Rotten Tomatoes score isn't abysmal, right? Which I think should have been our first, sign that maybe there was something unusual going on here. And it did manage to get a B+ cinema score, the same as Terminator, Dark Fate, and Dr. Sleep, other movies that some people genuinely seem to enjoy. Some people swear by Terminator, some people swear by Dr. Sleep. I'm one of the people who swears by Charlie's Angels. Which group or groups are you in? All right, and it's all bad. Now, neither of those movies, though, who embarrassed themselves plenty at the box office, but neither of them opened as low as 8 million. Like, wow, Ford versus Ferrari made that on Friday alone. More than that. Charlie's Angels also made about the same in its opening weekend in China, which means there ain't no one coming to save this movie. It's DOA. Deadline did a deep dive into the film's failure on Saturday. You might want to check that out. And two of the things they pointed to was that there were script problems, which meant they couldn't attract named talent beyond Kristen Stewart. Although Elizabeth Banks didn't really have named talent either. Well, she had Anna Kendrick, who I think is kind of on the same level as Kristen Stewart when it comes to Pitch Perfect, which is the series that got her Charlie's Angels. So I think it's reaching to say that maybe she wanted to have a Margot Robbie or a Jennifer Lawrence's Deadline his deadline assumed. Sony, though, Deadline says, lost confidence in the film late in the game, slashing the advertising budget by half to just $50 million. When it comes to advertising a big blockbuster, that's like nothing. That's really low. Here it was the inverse of Ford versus Ferrari, with the audience largely female, at 66%. But despite Banks' efforts to put together a diverse trio, the Charlie's Angels audience was overwhelmingly Caucasian, and the lowest turnout was African Americans. That's very unusual. They're usually second or third. Asian others usually in last place. So for African Americans to be dead last, wow. I mean, that might be another reason that Warner Brothers decided not to hire Ella Balinska as their Catwoman. Hollywood, when are you going to stop the colorism? There are clear financial ramifications at this point. I think eventually they'll notice, but I think it might take a couple of more movies. I'd be curious, if you are from the African American community here in the United States, why did you choose not to see Charlie's Angels? Why didn't you support Ella Balinska? All right, so The Good Liar also failed to connect with audiences, but did open on par with Bill Condon and Ian McKellen's last collaboration, Mr. Holmes, which opened in limited release, which is why its opening is a tad smaller. But The Good Liar was hit with a B cinema score. Mr. Holmes never got a cinema score because I don't think it ever truly went wide. Anyway, as for the rest of the box office, Midway might have fallen 50% in its second weekend, but it still only slipped to just second place, which will help the film down the line on streaming. The Good Liar, and especially Charlie's Angels, are also excellent streaming candidates. There's an argument to be made that The Good Liar should have started out on a streaming service, but I think, HBO Max, since it's a Warner Brothers flick, but I think Charlie's Angels was really good, and if it had a better marketing campaign, I think it could have done well in theaters. Meanwhile, with other holdovers, remember it was a very crowded weekend last weekend, we had 4 new releases. Playing with Fire is proving to be another surprisingly strong family flick like Addams Family, and it fell just 41%. Last Christmas also held up not bad, 42%. Perhaps it's that holiday angle that's helping it out. But as I said, Dr. Sleep took quite the fall, falling 60%, and it's not even up, it's just barely at 25 million in 2 weeks. That's so bad. Finally, while Jojo Rabbit added another almost 200 theaters, it still fell 29% in its 5th weekend. And oh look, while we're down here, there's Terminator Dark Fate, already out of the top 10 in just its 3rd weekend. It's at a mere 56.8 domestic, and worldwide, it's only up to 233.6. Oh boy, wow. But back to Jojo Rabbit, it looks like neither that film or Parasite will ever jump into the top 10, and we'll see if that affects either of their awards prospects. Parasite is a lock for Best Foreign Film nomination and probably win, to be honest with you. But I think we'll have to see if it jumps to other categories and what goes on with Jojo Rabbit. As I said on the live stream today, the member live stream, so many people online, well, it always seems like it's louder than maybe it actually is on Twitter, right? That's social media for you. But so many people were supportive of Jojo Rabbit. It's I think, interesting that, let's just put it that way, that it's unable to even get into the top 10, despite being in now pretty much 1,000 theaters. It should be in the top 10. Now, as for this, although you would think Parasite would have gotten to the top 10 too, to be fair. Now, as for this coming weekend, a lot of movies are looking to get out ahead of Thanksgiving, which falls very late this year. Usually it's like the third week of November, but it's always like, what is it, like the third Thursday of the month, and because of the way it fell, it's like dead last at the end of the month, which also shortens, by the way, the Christmas, the holiday season. But anyway, you have a lot of movies coming out this weekend, which really you would think would come out for Thanksgiving. Frozen 2 is expected to make it snow and is clearly freezing out its live-action competition. Speaking of Frozen 2, this is our next ticket montage. Instructions on how to participate are also in the video description, and I'll be tweeting out instructions during the week as well. So that's this week's Movie Math. Thanks for going over the box office with me. Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.